The hidden world of radio espionage. The airwaves hold secrets, hidden in the static between stations, buried beneath the hum of everyday broadcasts. Voices speak in code, numbers whispered in foreign tongues, signals that appear without warning, vanish without explanation. These aren't accidents, they're messages, and someone, somewhere, is listening. Tonight, we're diving into the shadowy world of mysterious radio transmissions. 5 signals that have puzzled experts, alarmed governments, and left amateur radio operators questioning everything they thought they knew about the frequencies around us. These aren't just ghost stories from the golden age of radio, they're happening now. Broadcasting from space, echoing from forgotten satellites, and carrying secrets that could reshape our understanding of modern espionage. What you're about to hear isn't science fiction. It's real, it's documented, and it's more disturbing than you might imagine. Number 1. The Cuban Lady, numbers in the static. In 2012, American radio enthusiasts stumbled upon a voice hidden in a previously silent frequency. Female, robotic, Spanish-speaking, reading out structured sequences like 57392. This was no test. It was a coded message from HMO-1, a Cuban intelligence numbers station. Tied to the conviction of Cuban spies in the 1990s, the Cuban Lady broadcasts instructions using one-time pad encryption, making them nearly impossible to decode. Investigations trace the transmissions to the same building as Radio Havana. These signals weren't just delivering instructions, they were also jamming others, disrupting asylum seeker broadcasts. The numbers weren't random, they were encrypted using one-time pads, making them virtually impossible to decode without the proper key. Each sequence was unique, each message designed to self-destruct after use. The Cuban Lady would broadcast these coded instructions to sleeper agents, resistance fighters, or intelligence operatives scattered across the Americas. All they needed was a radio and the right decryption method. Audio glitches exposed the system running on Windows XP, a detail that humanized this otherwise ghostly operation. The Cuban Lady had been broadcasting for over a decade, her code changing regularly, her purpose hidden behind layers of encryption that intelligence agencies insisted could never be broken. But HMO-1 wasn't just sending messages, it was also jamming them. U.S. radio experts discovered that the same Cuban agencies were deliberately interfering with broadcasts from asylum seekers and defectors trying to escape the regime. The airwaves had become a battlefield, with the Cuban Lady serving as both messenger and weapon. The persistence of the Cuban Lady underscores how powerful and enduring radio communication remains in the world of espionage. Even as digital surveillance and encrypted apps dominate headlines, shortwave transmissions continue to operate beneath the radar, speaking in numbers to agents who never left the Cold War behind. The Cuban Lady is just one of many mysterious voices from the past century. The concept of a numbers station, a broadcast consisting of voice or tones reading strings of seemingly random numbers, has fascinated and disturbed listeners since at least World War II. These stations are almost always unregistered, untraceable, and unaccounted for in any official capacity. Some are believed to be relics of spy games long gone. Others, like the Cuban Lady, are very much alive. Radio operators have long suspected Cuba's use of these broadcasts to manage clandestine networks inside the United States. Especially among communities sympathetic to revolutionary ideals, the U.S. government has remained mostly quiet on the matter, offering little commentary even as hobbyists record and publish hundreds of hours of these eerie sequences online. In 1998, the U.S. arrested and convicted members of the so-called Cuban V, a spy ring whose communications allegedly relied on encrypted radio broadcasts. That case reinforced suspicions that these ghostly signals weren't just academic curiosities, they were part of ongoing covert operations. And the technology? Remarkably simple. Shortwave radio receivers can be purchased cheaply and require no registration. One-time pad encryption, though ancient, remains theoretically unbreakable if used correctly. It's a spy's dream, invisible, untraceable, and deniable. And despite everything we've learned, the Cuban Lady is still broadcasting. Number 2. Sky King. Emergency action messages from the edge. Sky King, do not answer. These 7 words, broadcast over crackling static, signal one of the most chilling realities of modern military communications. To those who know what it means, it's not just a phrase, it's a potential harbinger of disaster. Sky King messages are part of the United States military's High-Frequency Global Communications System, HFGCS. This massive radio infrastructure spans continents and oceans, linking together nuclear submarines, bomber aircraft, missile silos, and command centers in a continuous stream of encrypted updates, test signals, and, occasionally, commands with world-ending implications. But unlike other military broadcasts, Sky King messages stand apart. These are Emergency Action Messages, EAMs, the highest priority, most sensitive form of transmission. They're designed to cut through all noise, override all other communications, and reach the people responsible for launching, controlling, or averting nuclear war. At first glance, these messages may seem mundane. They consist of call signs, repetition levels, and authentication codes. Brief, robotic-sounding blocks of audio that might be mistaken for radio jargon. But each element of the message carries a world of meaning. The number of times the call sign is repeated, once, twice, 3 times, or 4, can indicate urgency. 4 repetitions mean that the message is intended for nuclear-capable forces and could potentially be the order to arm or launch. Some of these transmissions contain further coded content, to be decrypted only by those with the proper access and verification keys. Civilian radio hobbyists, known as EAM chasers, have built an entire online subculture around tracking these broadcasts. Many use software-defined radios, SDRs, and high-frequency receivers to monitor military frequencies day and night. Entire websites and YouTube channels are dedicated to cataloging the dates, times, call signs, and lengths of Sky King messages. The chilling nature of the broadcasts, their obscurity, and their association with global warfare have earned them an almost mythic status online. One notable Sky King message occurred on July 8, 2022. Enthusiasts monitoring HFGCS channels recorded the standard opening, Sky King, do not answer." What followed was an authentication code, Whiskey Foxshot. These messages, when properly authenticated, are presumed to be genuine. And while this specific one may have been a drill or test, its structure mirrored that of a live EM. The military remains tight-lipped about the nature of these messages. Officials confirm their existence but rarely elaborate on their function. In the event of a real-world crisis, these messages could be used to authorize strikes, recall missions, initiate a launch-on warning protocol, or stand down a global response. Sky King is the final communication link in a chain that assumes all else may have failed. It is designed to function during nuclear war, after infrastructure has been obliterated and satellites destroyed. The military's E-4B Nightwatch aircraft, known as the Doomsday Planes, are constantly airborne or on alert, serving as flying command posts equipped with the capability to send or receive Sky King messages even after the Earth's surface is scarred by atomic fire. In some ways, Sky King is the spiritual successor to the Cold War's hotline that linked the White House with the Kremlin. But instead of one red telephone, it's an invisible signal, a coded voice flying through the atmosphere, waiting for someone with the right clearance to answer, or, more hauntingly, not to. The phrase, "do not answer," is itself an eerie safeguard. It ensures the receiving party simply hears the command and acts without replying. It's not just about maintaining radio silence, it's about eliminating any possibility of confirmation that could be intercepted, spoofed, or compromised. Critics have warned about the fragility of such systems. What if a message is sent in error? What if it is misinterpreted? What if a false flag signal is received during a moment of global tension? These are the questions that keep both military planners and radio listeners awake at night. Still, in an age where high-tech warfare involves drones, satellites, and AI-enhanced targeting systems, the continued reliance on radio waves and short encrypted voice commands feels almost anachronistic, and yet, it is precisely because of its simplicity and resilience that Sky King endures. The real horror of Sky King isn't the message itself, it's what it represents. Every time it is broadcast, there's a whisper of possibility, that the world is closer to annihilation than we realize. And every time someone listens in and hears that haunting phrase, they know they are eavesdropping on a conversation between global superpowers, where the next word might mean peace or the end. Number 3. Zombie satellites. When the dead speak again. In the vast, dark canvas of space, silence is expected. When a satellite dies, it usually stays dead, its systems fried, its batteries depleted, and its circuits forever frozen in orbit. But what happens when a dead satellite wakes up? Meet LS-1, the ghost that returned from the technological grave. Launched in February 1965 as part of the Lincoln Experimental Satellite (LS) program by the U.S. Air Force and MIT's Lincoln Laboratory, LS-1 was designed to test secure military communications. It was a pioneer in what would become the building blocks of modern satellite encryption and space-based signal relay. But LES-1 never made it into its full mission cycle. Due to a failed booster separation, the satellite entered an unstable orbit and lost contact soon after. For decades, it was presumed to be nothing more than space junk, a piece of Cold War hardware circling Earth in silent failure. Then, in 2012, nearly 47 years later, an amateur radio operator in the United Kingdom named Phil Williams detected an intermittent signal on the 237 MHz band, one long thought to be abandoned. Through trial, error, and signal analysis, Williams confirmed that the source was none other than LES-1. It had come back to life. The explanation, while scientific, didn't make the event any less eerie. Over the decades, the satellite's batteries had likely decayed to the point of disintegration, causing the power system to bypass failed cells and allow direct sunlight to trigger the transmitter. As a result, LS-1 would speak only when in sunlight and fall silent again in the darkness of Earth's shadow. A literal ghost satellite, waking with the day, the transmission itself was garbled, a repeating warble, modulated in a way that made it sound like a slow electronic sigh. It was enough to verify the satellite's identity, but not enough to retrieve meaningful data. It wasn't saying much, but it was saying something, and that to many was terrifying. LES-1 was soon joined by another Lazarus-like relic, LES-5. Launched in 1967, it had gone quiet in the 1970s, only to begin transmitting weak signals again in 2020. Once again, amateur radio operators were the first to notice, using increasingly sophisticated tools to isolate transmissions and plot orbits. The phenomenon of zombie satellites isn't just spooky, it's revealing. These unexpected revivals show how little control we have over the things we leave in space. Many satellites launched in the 20th century were not designed with end-of-life plans. They drift silently in graveyard orbits, or sometimes not so silently, and they're not alone. Other notorious examples include Transit 5B5, a 1960s-era navigation satellite that began emitting shortwave bursts decades after its mission ended, and the enigmatic 1970s Russian object dubbed Object 2014-28E, suspected by some analysts to be a space-based weapons test. The signals from these artifacts are difficult to interpret. Some may be residual transmissions triggered by mechanical failure or cosmic rays. Others may be deliberate, the result of hidden missions long since declassified, their secrets bleeding slowly into space. The implications are far-reaching. First, there's the military angle. If satellites presumed defunct can suddenly come back online, it raises questions about fail-safes and dormant capabilities. Could a satellite lie in wait for decades before activating a surveillance camera or signal jammer? Could it become a backdoor into global communication systems? Second, there's the environmental concern. Zombie satellites are a reminder of the orbital debris problem. Each defunct object represents a risk to active satellites, space stations, and future missions. Revived satellites only complicate the tracking and cataloging efforts already strained by tens of thousands of orbital objects. Third, there's the philosophical question. In an age where humanity increasingly relies on satellites for GPS, weather, surveillance, and global communication, these ghost machines remind us of our digital fragility. What we send into space can outlive us, and occasionally speak long after we're gone. For amateur radio operators, the thrill of detecting a zombie satellite goes beyond mere curiosity. It's about touching a forgotten chapter of space history. When they capture a repeating tone from an object launched before man walked on the moon, they're not just hearing noise, they're listening to time travel. The satellite speaks in beeps, pulses, and decaying tones. Each echo is a message from a machine that refuses to stay silent. Each signal is a reminder that even in the vacuum of space, nothing is ever truly gone. As humanity ventures further into the stars, the ghosts of our technological past may continue to awaken, and someone, somewhere, with a homemade antenna and a passion for discovery, will be the first to hear them. Number 4. North Korea's V15, the return of the numbers. Of all the world's number stations, few provoke as much anxiety and speculation as those originating from North Korea. For decades, the reclusive regime has operated in near total isolation, communicating through obscure channels with agents and operatives abroad. Among the most cryptic and disturbing of those channels is the shortwave station known to radio enthusiasts as V15. V15 first surfaced in the 1980s, broadcasting over shortwave frequencies in a chillingly simple format. Strings of numbers read aloud by a female voice in Korean. The broadcasts often began with patriotic music or martial songs, followed by what were purported to be mathematical instructions. Page 459, question number 35. Page 913, question number 55. To the untrained ear, it sounded like an educational program, perhaps distance learning for rural students. But intelligence experts believed otherwise. These weren't lessons. They were encrypted instructions sent to North Korean spies operating in South Korea and other parts of the world. The numbers likely referred to passages in one-time pad cipher books, unbreakable codes if used properly and destroyed after decryption. For decades, these broadcasts continued, often on odd schedules and across varied frequencies. The South Korean intelligence community took them very seriously, considering them a central component of North Korea's spycraft. And then, suddenly, V15 went silent in 2001. This wasn't seen as a cessation of operations, but rather a tactical shift. As digital communications became more widespread, North Korean agents likely began using USB drives, encrypted flash messages, steganography, and other digital methods to receive commands. Shortwave numbers stations, while secure, were cumbersome, slow, and easy to detect. But in 2016, amidst escalating nuclear tests, missile launches, and renewed tensions, the numbers returned. On June 23rd of that year, V15 resumed broadcasting after a 15-year hiatus. The voice was different, smoother, slightly more synthetic, and the format had changed. There was now more structure, longer musical intros, and deliberate shifts in pitch and cadence, but the message was the same. Page 918, question number 21. To seasoned intelligence analysts, the return of V15 was a red flag. It suggested that North Korea was reactivating dormant espionage networks, re-engaging sleeper cells, or training a new generation of agents using old-school techniques. One-time pad encryption, after all, is still considered one of the most secure forms of communication, especially in regimes that distrust modern technology. V15 broadcasts grew more frequent in 2017, mirroring the rhythm of nuclear threats and UN sanctions. The station became a barometer of North Korean aggression. Observers noticed a disturbing pattern. After each broadcast, North Korean cyber attacks would spike. While correlation doesn't prove causation, the timing was difficult to ignore. The voice of the broadcaster, believed by some to be computer-generated, read the numbers with unsettling regularity. Radio hobbyists across Asia and Europe recorded the broadcasts and shared them online, leading to a renewed interest in number stations and their haunting aesthetics. YouTube channels began to post compilations of V15 broadcasts, racking up millions of views and introducing a new generation to the eerie world of shortwave espionage. But in late 2019, V15 fell silent again. Once more, experts speculated about a shift in tactics. North Korea had become increasingly sophisticated in its cyber capabilities, launching some of the world's most notorious digital intrusions. From the Sony Pictures hack to WannaCry ransomware, the regime had proven it could strike through fiber optics just as effectively as through airwaves. Still, the brief reactivation of V15 had made its point. The old methods still worked. In fact, in some ways, they were safer. Radio waves can't be traced back easily. There's no IP address to follow, no packet trail, no metadata, just a voice, a set of numbers, and silence. South Korea responded to the V15 broadcasts with increased surveillance and counterintelligence operations. Agents suspected of receiving the transmissions were interrogated or expelled. The broadcasts themselves were analyzed for hidden messages, changes in timing, inflection, or background noise, but the truth remains elusive. As of early 2024, V15 has not resumed, but few believe it's truly gone. Instead, it waits, ready to return in the event of war, political crisis, or covert opportunity. It has become the voice of North Korea's invisible army, a ghost transmission with real-world consequences. The eerie nature of V15 goes beyond its function. It's the feeling it evokes, the loneliness of a single voice speaking numbers into the void, never acknowledging the listener. It's the psychological weight of knowing that someone, somewhere, is waiting for that message to activate a mission, deliver a report, or change the course of a diplomatic crisis. And perhaps most chilling of all, we'll never know who hears it. Number stations like V15 operate on frequencies that anyone with a radio can tune into. That's the point. The signals are public. The message, however, is private, locked behind layers of cryptographic insulation. Even the agents receiving them might not know who sent the original order. The network is decentralized, compartmentalized, and deniable. This deniability is what makes V15 so dangerous. North Korea can and does deny the station's very existence, dismissing it as Western propaganda, and without proof, without a caught agent, a decrypted code, or a paper trail, there's little anyone can do. Yet the fear persists. Somewhere, in the quietest hours of the night, someone may be tuning in, waiting to hear the next string of numbers that will change their life, and someone else's. Number 5. China's spaceplane transmissions, a new frontier in espionage. In the final weeks of 2023, something unsettling happened high above Earth, not on land or sea, but in the quiet vastness of low Earth orbit. A Chinese robotic spaceplane, cloaked in secrecy and launched from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, made headlines for its unusual mission. While the Chinese government officially stated that the craft was designed to test reusable spacecraft technologies and promote peaceful space research, what happened next ignited a firestorm of concern in the West. The spaceplane, roughly analogous to the U.S. Air Force's X-37B, deployed not one, not two, but 6 small unidentified objects into orbit. These objects weren't labeled, weren't listed in any public satellite registry, and didn't correspond to any scientific experiment known to international space agencies. But what alarmed Western intelligence agencies the most wasn't just their deployment. It was what they started doing. Shortly after release, all 6 objects began transmitting signals across various radio bands. At first, these transmissions seemed like basic telemetry, pulses of data used to track location, orientation, and stability. But amateur radio operators, satellite trackers, and SIGINT, signals intelligence analysts, noticed something strange. The signals pulsed in highly regular patterns, often repeating in precisely timed intervals. Some oscillated in ways inconsistent with normal data reporting. Others appeared to respond to passing satellites or change their behavior based on geographical positioning. Even more disturbing, the signals grew stronger when the spaceplane passed over North America's western coast. This pattern led analysts to a chilling hypothesis that the transmissions weren't just environmental or experimental in nature. They might be reconnaissance in disguise, or worse, probes designed to test, map, or even interfere with Western communication networks. By February 2024, the Chinese spaceplane had completed its main mission and returned to Earth. But the 6 mysterious objects remained, and in May, a 7th object was released into orbit, well after the craft had supposedly shut down its operational activities. This new object wasn't just another transmitter. It behaved differently. It changed altitude more frequently, spun on different axes, and modulated its output to new radio frequencies. Some amateur satellite trackers labeled it the ghost node, suggesting that it was not simply another passive object, but something more interactive, possibly capable of receiving commands or manipulating its transmissions in real time. China's official response remained vague. The experiment was a routine part of validating technologies for space science, and any claims of espionage were baseless conspiracy theories. But this response did little to calm the intelligence community. Why? Because this was not China's first foray into mysterious orbital activity. Back in 2013, a satellite named SJ-15, Shijian-15, made headlines after it began maneuvering in orbit with startling agility, approaching and nudging other Chinese satellites in ways that suggested robotic manipulation, a potential precursor to satellite servicing, or anti-satellite warfare, ASAT. In 2016, another Chinese satellite reportedly deployed a robotic arm capable of grabbing or disabling other satellites. These developments pointed toward an alarming trend. China was mastering the art of in-orbit interaction, a game-changing capability in any future conflict. The 2023 spaceplane mission was different, though. It wasn't about grabbing satellites, it was about broadcasting, quietly, continuously, and with unknown intent. The use of radio frequencies as covert communication channels has long been a staple of espionage. But when such broadcasts come from orbiting platforms under the control of a rival superpower, the implications multiply. These signals could serve a variety of purposes. Surveillance, mapping the density and layout of Western communication satellites and defense infrastructure. Testing vulnerabilities, probing for weaknesses in how certain military or civilian systems respond to unexpected interference. Data interception, capturing leaked electromagnetic emissions or stray signals from terrestrial sources. Pre-positioning, setting up dormant systems that could be activated in wartime to jam, disrupt, or spoof GPS and satellite signals. The fact that the spaceplane deployed these objects over North America, and that their signals intensified over specific regions, suggested more than passive experimentation. Experts in orbital intelligence noted how the satellite signals mimicked certain formats used in U.S. military systems, raising fears that the transmissions were crafted to blend in, escape detection, or even trigger automated responses in defense networks. Others speculated that the signals weren't intended for interception at all, but were instead delivering beaconed messages to pre-established ground stations in North America. Could these objects be linked to an espionage network on the ground? While no direct evidence supports this theory, the possibility echoes the methods of Cold War spycraft: shortwave radio messages, number stations, and dead drops. In the 21st century, however, the dead drops might orbit Earth, and the messages might ride on encrypted spaceplane signals bouncing through the ionosphere. The secrecy surrounding China's spaceplane missions only adds to the mystery. Unlike NASA or the European Space Agency, which often publish detailed mission profiles, Chinese space endeavors are tightly controlled by the People's Liberation Army, PLA. Civilian partners exist in name, but the primary decision-making and operational control belong to military intelligence. As of mid-2025, all 7 objects remain in orbit. Their signals persist, mostly benign, occasionally changing, always inscrutable. Western nations have begun developing countermeasures. The United States Space Force and DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, have accelerated work on rapid launch anti-satellite drones and AI-powered orbital surveillance. NATO has quietly revised its rules of engagement regarding unidentified orbital threats. Private companies like SpaceX and Planet Labs are being asked to increase telemetry logging and spectrum monitoring. Yet none of this answers the question that radio enthusiasts, military analysts, and amateur astronomers have all been asking: what are these signals really saying? So far, nothing has been decoded, nothing overtly hostile has occurred, but that might be the most disturbing detail of all, that these signals aren't meant to be understood today. They may be placeholders, keys, beacons, triggers for some future event. And if that's the case, we won't know their purpose until it's already too late. In conclusion, the hidden frequencies that shape our world, these 5 mysterious signals, the Cuban Lady, Sky King, zombie satellites, North Korea's V15, and China's spaceplane transmissions, are more than oddities in the radio spectrum. They're windows into a parallel world of secrets, shadows, and strategies that operate far beyond public view. A world where the airwaves are weaponized, satellites whisper commands, and silence often speaks louder than words. For most people, the radio dial is a relic, a technology surpassed by smartphones, Wi-Fi, and instant messaging. But beneath the hum of top 40 stations and political talk shows, the electromagnetic spectrum is teeming with hidden activity. The frequencies between stations aren't dead space. They're the back alleys of modern intelligence, traveled by encrypted voices and ghost transmissions. What's most unsettling is how these signals persist, even thrive, in the digital age, in an era dominated by surveillance satellites, facial recognition, artificial intelligence, and 5G networks. The most sensitive military and intelligence communications are often still carried by shortwave radio and analog pulses. Why? Because some hold methods are still the safest. They're harder to trace, easier to hide, and uniquely resistant to cyber attacks. Each of the 5 transmissions explored here reveals a different facet of 21st century espionage. The Cuban Lady reminds us that Cold War techniques remain in play, transmitting secrets to unseen agents across oceans with nothing more than a radio and an old codebook. Sky King proves that even the most terrifying commands, those that could trigger nuclear war, are still spoken over the air, in clear phrases that hobbyists can hear but never decode. Zombie satellites expose our forgotten technological past, where machines left for dead begin broadcasting again like haunted relics. V15 demonstrates how authoritarian regimes like North Korea still rely on arcane but effective tools to activate sleeper agents and coordinate subversion. China's spaceplane warns us that the next battleground may be orbital, and that the weapons of tomorrow might already be circling overhead, whispering in code. All of these signals, real, documented, and still active in many cases, have something in common. They're open secrets. Anyone with the right tools, patience, and curiosity can hear them, and yet their meanings remain hidden behind layers of encryption, silence, and geopolitical ambiguity. It's this contradiction, open yet opaque, present yet deniable, that makes them so powerful and so terrifying. Because if hobbyists can pick them up, what else might be out there? What signals are we missing? What transmissions are designed to be intercepted, not by governments but by specific agents in specific places, waiting for a specific phrase? The rise of amateur radio monitoring has brought some degree of transparency. Enthusiasts across the world collaborate on forums, log every Sky King message, timestamp every Cuban broadcast, and track Chinese satellites with astonishing precision. These civilians act as a kind of unintentional oversight committee, watching the watchers. But their reach is limited. They can record, observe, and speculate, but they can't decrypt, disrupt, or verify intent. They are listeners, not participants. And that may be the most important takeaway of all, that the world's most sensitive, dangerous, and consequential conversations are happening right now, in frequencies just above or below what we hear, in channels we don't monitor, in signals we mistake for static. The next major military operation, intelligence maneuver, or global escalation may begin not with a missile, a news conference, or a tweet, but with a quiet voice on an obscure frequency, repeating numbers into the void. 5, 7, 3, 9, 2. Sky King, do not answer. A warble from a satellite that should have died decades ago. A robotic woman reading math problems that are anything but. A pulse from a Chinese orbiter flying silently over California. These are not coincidences. They are instructions, triggers, warnings, and they are waiting for someone to listen and someone else to obey. In the coming years, the lines between conventional warfare, digital warfare, and signal warfare will blur even further. Governments will continue to exploit the electromagnetic spectrum, embedding codes and frequencies that nobody thinks to monitor. Drones will receive activation signals buried in weather broadcasts. Deep cover agents will be triggered by what sounds like an innocuous melody on a state-run station. A simple sequence of numbers could be the prelude to cyber attacks, assassinations, or financial disruption. The electromagnetic spectrum, invisible, intangible, and omnipresent, is the new battlefield. And it doesn't sleep. That's why every time you hear static, every time your radio catches an unexplainable signal, every time a satellite pings a noise that no one can explain, you might not be imagining it. You might be catching the edge of a global secret, a transmission not meant for you, but heard by you all the same. The question is, now that you've heard it, what will you do?